Alright, this video is going to be yet another response to Sergeant Willie Pete. For those of you who don't like it when I make video responses to Sergeant Willie Pete, go ahead and click off the video now because, as I always say, if you continue to watch beyond this point, you paid for the tickets. Alright, now that we got the disclaimer out the way, there are a few things I want to address before I get to the main bone of contention. You told a story about a black guy who was, I guess he was seeing an Asian chick. And I'm just paraphrasing because I ain't got time to go back and listen to the whole video and figure out what you said exactly. But basically, you said that this Asian chick and her parents, but mostly the Asian chick, gave him this ultimatum that if you don't keep straight A's or stay on the honor roll or something, that you're not going to be able to date me. And you say this like this is a positive thing, like this is some kind of a solution. This is exactly the type of thing. What are you doing, girl? Dog's going crazy. Anyway, this is one of the points I was speaking out against in my videos I made about Hill Harper. It is not black women's or black girls' jobs to raise their future husbands. You should want to do well in life for you, so you can have a nice house, so you can drive a nice car, so you can live in a nice neighborhood and take vacations. Do it because you want to be the best person you can be, not because some chick is dangling moo yaya in front of you. That's like something they do with a horse or a camel. I forget which animal it is, but they'll put a carrot on a stick and dangle it in front of the animal to get them to turn and go where they want them to go. Where's your self-motivation? Your inner drive, man? I so don't have time for a guy who needs to use me as motivation to do what he's supposed to do anyway, like make the honor roll. I meant the honor roll, not the honor row. But anyway, if I'm your motivation, then once you get me, are you going to stop progressing? So no, I need a self-driven man. But I digress. You see, challenging a boy to make the honor roll is something a parent is supposed to do. And if there's some fast-ass middle school or high school girl telling my son that if he ditches class or whatever that she'll give him some sexy time, I and his father are supposed to be there to say, hey, if we find out you missed class or got in trouble over some bullshit, there's going to be consequences and repercussions. So there is no, Contrell, if you go to class, I'll date you. No, Contrell, if you don't go to class, you don't leave the house this weekend. You don't get the car, you don't get the computer, you don't get the phone, you don't get the TV. It's not some teenage girl's job to keep my son on track. It is my job and his father's job as parents to keep his behavior under control. But anyway, if we look throughout history, Columbus didn't sail the ocean blue to impress some girl whose panties he was trying to get into. He did that because there was a natural curiosity in him. He wanted to explore. He wanted to claim land for his country. He wanted to be great. None of our presidents became president so they could get chicks. Yes, quite a few of our presidents was getting some on the side in the Oval Office, but that's not why they became president. The men who are the highest achievers motivate themselves. Alright, let me jump back to this whole thing about if black women would stop sleeping with certain men, then men would become better men. I mean, all that sounds good, and in a perfect world that would work, which is kind of a contradiction because if it was a perfect world then it wouldn't be necessary. But the problem with that is, if women were modifying men's behavior by doing some kind of coochie lockdown, then that would put women in control. If vagina had that much power, then why don't women run the world? I mean, really, if all we had to do was lock down the coochie to get what we wanted, we'd be running this bitch. You're forgetting to factor in women's vulnerabilities. Women are moved by words. Women need love. Also, there is age vulnerability, as in males tend to like females who are younger than them. And in fact, over half of all teenage pregnancies are caused by adult males. There's no way we're going to be able to make enough women invulnerable to men's advances. And again, I'm not talking about what would happen in a perfect world. I'm talking about what would realistically happen. The problem isn't so much women choosing the wrong man. I mean, it is, but the bigger problem is that society has removed the consequences for doing that. Women now have an escape for all consequences of their sex lives except for STDs. If you get pregnant nowadays, you can stick the father for child support even if he didn't even want the kid. And if you can't find the father or you can't figure out who he is even after the 12th time you went on Maury, that's okay, you can go on welfare. Back in the day, if a man abandoned his family or refused to marry a chick that he knocked up, she was kinda screwed. Literally and figuratively. If she kept the baby, it would be a lot harder for her to get married, and since women didn't have the earning potential that they have today or even the potential that the men had back then in many cases that woman would have doomed herself to a life of poverty. That's what was keeping women in line. It was never the case that women were keeping men in line. And in fact, men were keeping women in check. Because if she wasn't the type of woman he could be proud of and take home to mom and be proud to have to be the mother of his children, she wouldn't get wifed up. Being a wife used to be a woman's main objective. Not getting a career or becoming a big star, but becoming a wife and a mother. We've even got female celebrities who absolutely could find a man if they really wanted to, talking about they might become a single mom like Jennifer Aniston. Jump back 70 years and see would you see a Hollywood actress saying something like that. So, if black women did do a coochie lockdown and the men did raise their standards, then that would put women in control, and it's never been like that. Women have never kept men in check. Now you can say that men kept other men in check, because if this teenage boy knocked up this teenage girl, her father was going to get the shotty, and there was going to be a wedding whether that boy liked it or not. You could also say that society kept men in check, because if a man knocked up a woman and wasn't trying to marry her, the other people in town might start trying to shame him into it. They'll be like, Bill, you ought to marry that girl, or Bill, you need to do the right thing. So this idea that coochie lockdown or vagina power modify men's behavior on a large scale, that's just a good punchline for a joke or something that Alexis K. Taylor can use to sell books. And that's not an Alexis K. Taylor diss, so don't even get started. Alright, correction, or should I say footnote. Pussy may be that strong, but women aren't. I mean, really, Pete, think about it. If you have a daughter, when she gets about 16 or 17 or however old your daughter has to be able to go on dates, aren't you going to screen the guys she goes out with? Or are you just going to let her go out with anybody, including Devontae from the hood, who ain't got shit going for him, but she's going to use her coochie to motivate him to become a doctor? Now, of course, I'm being a bit facetious, but real talk, you're not going to let your daughter go out with just anybody. Why? Because you know females are vulnerable. And you might say, well, I ain't gonna let my son go out with just anybody either. Yeah, but I think you're gonna keep your eye on your daughter a little bit more because she's got more to lose. It'll fuck her up more to have a child out of wedlock than it will your son. And even if she didn't actually get knocked up, there's her reputation. You'd want to protect that as well because that affects your reputation. Think about how Lawrence Fishburne feels right now. But anyway, you're going to keep your daughter in check by being her first cock blocker, and you're going to keep your son in check by keeping him from doing stupid shit to get girls. That's the way it's supposed to work. So one of the first things we would have to do to fix the black community is to bring back consequences for women. Men have consequences, and they always have. If women really had to live with the consequences of their actions, they'd be a lot more careful. Alright, I think that's all I have to say for this topic. I'll address anything else in another video. Peace.